All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Oh, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. If you're just joining us, I'm here to answer your legal questions here on the air. Of course, we'll talk about a little of anything and everything. We've got a family law question on the board, an appeals process question on the board, and phone line number one that still doesn't work because of the big lightning strike. In fact, I was just surveying the studio. I may have to stay late and help them rewire this place. Lightning does a lot of damage, And, of course, if you can imagine, like any other radio or TV enterprise, this place is just snaking with telecommunications fibers and radio coaxial fibers and I don't know what else, all kinds of things. They even say one of the boards blew up and started on fire, although I'm told that was a little dramatized, and we'll see. Sandra, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. You have a family law issue. What's going on?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sandra. I've been married for 6 years. My husband and I both had a daughter about 10 years ago, and he never signed her papers with his name on it,
Okay.
Her birth certificate, and he's never put me on anything legally. I mean, there's nothing health issues with him right now. I have nothing with that. I'm not worried about that. But in the future, I'm just thinking out for my daughter. He's never done anything legally. If he were to pass, would my daughter, or would I inherit whatever from his insurances, the house, or would it legally go if he had? I don't even know if he would. He has older children to a previous marriage.
Okay. Yeah.
By law, would it come to me since I have a child under the age of 18?
You're talking, and you don't know what his will's going to say or not say.
No.
So, assuming that he dies without a will, or assuming that you want to take against the will, when he has prior adult children to a different marriage, I believe you get the first, I think, $30,000 or something like that, and then the remainder gets split between you and those children.
Okay.
I think that's the formula, although off the top of my head I don't remember the exact formula, but the answer is there's a provision for that, so you don't get to take, as the wife, you don't automatically take everything because he has adult children from a previous marriage or children from a previous marriage.
Okay, even though they are adults.
Right.
Because, well, what about, like, any type of insurance, like if he has
insurance is completely,
IRAs?
Yeah, insurance is completely based on designations. That is not controlled by the law of intestacy.
So, in other words, if he had somebody on those insurance, my child would not get anything.
He puts anybody on there he wants.
Okay, because he keeps telling me that he found out by law, because we're married, it would automatically go to me because I'm the mother,
Well, if he leaves it to your child, it would go to you as the mom to hold in trust for the child, arguably. But there's no, I can designate on my retirement you as the beneficiary, right? Mm-hmm. And then you would get it.
Okay.
So long story short is no. Now, sometimes we say somebody has to have an insurable interest in somebody else, so that usually has to be a relative or a spouse if there's a requirement for insurable interest. But nonetheless, it could still pretty much be anybody but who you want it to be if he leaves it that way.
Okay, I didn't think by law I would be able to say, okay, it would come to me or to the child to take care of until she reaches that age.
Well, you can't, because insurance doesn't belong to anybody until he dies, and then it vests in the person is the beneficiary.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm just saying he tried telling me that it would automatically come to me for that child.
Right.
And I never heard of such a thing.
Well, go to WHP580.com. This will be up as a podcast, the second hour, by about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and then you can play this conversation for him.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, Sandra. 540-0580. Gabe, you're on the air. Hey, Gabe.
Hey, good afternoon, Carl. Okay, I have, I guess, a couple questions. I'm trying to sort out an appeals process relative to a DUI.
Okay.
What I have is that we've got a conviction and a sentence, which we went through the appeals process. We actually went to the Superior Court. The Superior Court refused to hear.
Right.
I have scheduled a sentencing, I guess it is, that is ready to come up, and I was told that there's not a process where I can appeal. I'm under the understanding that I'm able to bring some witnesses that were not available prior to that can state that I, in fact, was not driving, and I'm wondering if I can stay a sentencing or stay an incarceration based on appealing, which I no, on new evidence. We'll just say it.
Right. Well, if you found new evidence, you have to immediately file a motion with the court, saying you found new evidence. Okay. And since your conviction is final, the only way to do that would be with a Post-Conviction Relief Act motion, a PCRA. Mm-hmm. And then you would file that and say, Judge, I need a new trial, and here's why. It's discretionary with the court whether to keep you out on bail or require you to serve your sentence while the PCRA is being decided.
Okay, so since it's just a minimum sentence of like 30 days, the judge may in fact allow that process, because I was told that he wouldn't allow it and I would actually have to serve.
Many times you have to serve it. It's very rare to get somebody out on a PCRA.
Okay. So and in that case, it's kind of the only thing that you're going to save is if you do get another hearing, you get your license reinstated.
Correct, and you get the conviction off your record. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Why were those witnesses not available the first time around?
Well, I wasn't even aware that that it would play an issue. What we were after was a witness that stated that they had dropped me off at a vehicle that I did not drive thereafter. But the witnesses came forward because after the court hearing that the conviction took place on, they basically stated, well, we saw that you didn't drive away, and the officer that said that he saw you at the place where we were is in fact wrong. The officer gave testimony that he saw me prior to before I was in a vehicle. So that led by inference to the judge to decide that there would be a conviction because of the eyewitness testimony, so to speak, of the officer who, after the fact and in the court hearing, stated that, no, well, now that I see that it is this gentleman, I recognize that it was the gentleman that I saw get into a car at a certain place. Therefore, he must have drove to another place.
Right, right. And, of course, the judge could find those witnesses discreditable and the police officer credible, and then it doesn't make a difference, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the catch. And so it's perplexing because I'm sort of stuck with it doesn't look like I really have any recourse, and I don't really
Why couldn't you, with reasonable diligence, have discovered those witnesses in the first instance?
Because the going up to the court hearing, I actually had not even seen the officer's report. It was a mistake on the part of the attorney not to get me that information.
Yeah.
And I had never saw it. So we were sitting there in the court hearing, and I started to read it, and there was no way I could address it at that particular point, so we had to let it slide.
Got it.
I then therefore talked to other people, and they said, well, we certainly saw that you left and who you left with, and it certainly wasn't your vehicle. So therefore, and what the officer testified was that he had actually seen me vomiting beside a vehicle that looked like my vehicle.
Gosh.
And that's the testimony of witnesses. 2 or 3 other witnesses can verify that was in fact not true. So he's mistaken. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. But now I'm into this situation where, because it wasn't brought forward before,
you may be without remedy at this point. And PCRA may or may not work for you, but it sounds problematic. But it should have been your attorney's job to bring that stuff forward and discuss the case fully with you. If you can show that he didn't do a full investigation and bring forward that evidence, then you may be on to something. But the court's going to want to know, when did you become aware that this was important? And you're going to say at the time of the hearing it was too late.
No, not at the time of the hearing, afterwards. But one of the things that happened, Carl, was that the actual attorney that represented me during the hearing did not follow through with my processes and my appeals processes, and therefore I had to hire someone else.
Gotcha.
So I have on record that the first attorney was removed because of not being diligent.
Interesting. So you may have a strong PCRA argument. It's just a question whether they stay out of jail then. All right, boss.
Thanks very much, sir. Have a good day.
You too. 540-0580. When we get back from break, we're going to talk to Daryl about a real estate issue. I just want to remind you before we go to stop in at Carlisle Beer and Cigar. That's over in Carlisle by the Walmart. It's the beer distributorship that's been there for years, but it's now Carlisle Beer and Cigar. They've got an awesome walk-in humidor in there. I was actually there yesterday to get some number 9, which I drank with my rabbit for lunch. And they do have a great humidor there too. So if you're into cigars and you want to catch a good cigar, try Carlisle Beer and Cigar right over by the Walmart in Carlisle. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Hey, I want to give a shout-out to the farmers market they're doing in Carlisle on Wednesday nights. If you get a chance, stop down there. I watched the thing. I kept driving by it and walking by it, not paying attention because, I walk from my office, and to get to the farmers market, you have to go by the gingerbread man, so I never quite made it that far. But I decided Wednesday night, I would go down there and check it out. And when I did, I was pleasantly surprised. They've got a great selection. They got 2 people doing some fresh breads. They've got all kinds of great vegetable stands. In fact, I know one of the girls who has the farm, one of the farms, it turns out. But they also have a guy there, I think his name is Shirk. He sells meat. And I bought some steak from him the other day, really, really good. I bought a rabbit from him. They've just got some amazing selection of meat that we wouldn't otherwise usually get in Carlisle. So a little shout out to it anyhow. 540-0580. Daryl, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl. How you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
No problem. What's going on?
I had a problem here. I'll make this as short as I can and fast. I had a problem about a week ago. I rent in Mechanicsburg a 4-unit apartment. I rent apartment second floor. Had a problem. Apparently there was a leak, not in my apartment. I didn't know anything. I work third shift. I'm in school. I take classes during the day. Next thing I know, I hear my alarm on my front door go off, and that thing will wake the dead. Here I come. I hear voices. I go running out there with my firearm. Okay? I didn't know who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, we're owned by a realty company who, you know how that goes. There's a landlord, then he goes to a realty company. That's fine. In the event of an emergency, from what I understand, from what I pulled up online, they can just come in the event of an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Now, this is the second problem. They want to come back in, a tenant called, but they want to bring police with them. And I called the realty company because of what transpired. Now, I'm taking I'm taking law is what I'm taking.
Mm-hmm.
And something's not meshing here because I'm told through the realty company that the law enforcement officer can just come in my residence if they give him permission. They can just come in. There's no warrant, no anything. And I had said, you're basically saying I have no rights.
Well, here's the answer. If a landlord has access to the property, okay?
Okay.
And why are they bringing the police along? What's the issue there?
Because I ran out. The long and short of it is I was asleep. I didn't hear anything but my alarm go off.
Right.
And I go running out there, and, well, my firearm is about 2 feet away from the guy's head. Right. I didn't know who he was. He didn't answer me right away, and there was 2 of them. And they were rather large individuals. You know.
Right, so these guys came into your house without you knowing they were coming in.
Exactly.
And you, as you're entitled to do, we're going to use force, and you're allowed to have a presumption that they're there to do you harm. Fortunately, you didn't shoot them, so we don't have to argue that in court, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But long and short of it is I don't think you did anything illegal or unjustified. So now who's coming back when?
Okay, he's called, I won't say any names or anything,
right.
But he is calling me back and letting me know on the date that they're coming back, and they're plumbers. They don't feel comfortable coming here with me here.
Right.
They want to bring the police with them. Now, I've taught, being law, it's municipal police officers training education. That's what it is. And I called a couple buddies of mine that are state troopers, and they said, hell no, they can't. Oops, sorry.
Well, no, they can't make, listen, they can't make you let the police come in, okay?
They have to have, what I was told is, you can tell me, you know far more about the law than I do at this point. You know, as far as I know, they have to have a piece of paper signed by a judge.
They need a warrant to come in without your consent, okay?
Okay.
If they do come in without your consent, it could be a violation of your constitutional rights, and anything that was obtained in the way of evidence would not be admissible against you, okay?
Okay, Okay, so
Now,
so I have a right to stand, say, in the threshold of the doorway and tell them.
Wait. Just slow down here, okay? You can make life more complicated than it needs to be.
Okay.
What you need to do is work out a detente here, okay? So, yeah, you can stand in the doorway and say, no, you can't come in. And if the police feel like coming in, they can pick your ass up, throw it on the sofa, handcuff you, and later you can complain about whether it was constitutional or not. It doesn't do anybody any good, and somehow, something bad will come out of it, all right?
Okay.
So let's slow down. Go to your landlord and say, listen, I talked to my attorney on the air, and he said, why don't we, what would make you guys, your plumber, comfortable? I don't really want the police there, but since we all will understand that I am not, I didn't know who was coming to my house and I have an absolute right of self-defense, why don't you guys come to the door and I'll greet you like a human being and we'll all walk in together? And if he says no, you say, well then, why don't you hire a constable for security? And if you hire a constable for security, if that makes you feel better, I will allow the constable to come in and stand around while we do this. Now, you may say, I don't want law in my... But here's the answer.
Right.
You don't have to do it that way. But it sure would make it a lot easier because sooner or later they're going to get access and a judge might ultimately say, okay, you got to let the landlord in, and I understand the landlord does have a reasonable fear, even though it's a fear that was based on justifiable action by you. To solve the problem, I'm going to say the landlord can come in, and you don't need to be present when it happens.
Okay, the landlord. Okay, I don't know if you meant this or not, but the landlord's not the problem, or the plumbers. That's not the problem. The problem is the police presence.
I understand that. I'm trying to tell you something, though.
Okay.
Ultimately, they may be able to get a warrant, right? Ultimately, the police may be able to come in. Why not get a constable who's not really a police officer, right? He's not there to investigate crime and look at your marijuana collection.
Okay. I'm more worried about my guns personally, but okay.
Well, but the answer is if you guys tell the landlord to hire a constable, and they'll come in and just act as physical security if that's their issue. And I understand you don't want the government there, but here's the answer. Then if I'm the landlord, I'm just going to evict your butt, right? So the next question is, do you want to stay there? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your landlord going forward? I feel like your counselor, not your lawyer, okay? My point is you can assert every legal right you have to the hilt, which I sometimes do, and I sometimes recommend. But here what I'm saying is the landlord has a right to come in. They do have a reason to kind of feel a little scared. I think they're kind of being unnecessarily afraid at this point, right?
Right, exactly.
Because it was all justifiable and it all makes sense in the interim.
Exactly.
But I don't know. Maybe you look like Gary Busey. You know what I mean? So maybe that's the problem.
But no, I can like I said, I'm taking classes now.
Yeah, no, and I understand it. And listen, don't do what the lawyers do. Okay, God bless young lawyers. I was one once myself. If I could go back in time, I'd shoot myself. Here's my point.
Okay.
They get fresh out of law school, right? Or even like in their second year of law school, and you'll go down to a district judge court hearing, and you can tell the lawyers there, right? They're the young wannabe lawyer. They got their legs crossed, they got their tie on, and they got their little folder, and they're prepping in the hallway for their big traffic ticket hearing, right?
Right.
And then you say, hey, well, you're going to represent yourself. Yeah, I go to Dickinson Law School. I'm a 2L. And let me tell you all the defects in the ticket. And he can't prove. And I've got pictures of the bushes. And I blah, blah, blah. And they go in, and 13 seconds later, they're convicted of the minor traffic violation. Right. And they fail to understand that the court is simply going to go, all right, police officer says you did it. I generally go with the police officer. Your theory is the police officer can't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt because there was a bush in the way, but the officer says the bush didn't obscure his vision. You lose.
Right.
And my point is they would have been much better off to walk in and say hi to the officer and say, officer, I know you pulled me over for that stop sign thing. I feel really bad that you think I went through the stop sign, and maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I honestly didn't think I did, but could we work this out because I'd rather just not have the points on my license, and I realized it'd be a fine. And the officer would say, sure, we'll do a 3111, and everybody live happily ever after. So what my point on this whole tirade right now is you may have a lot of legal rights and you may be able to assert them to the nth degree. All you're going to do is ultimately get evicted from where you're living.
Right. Okay.
So if you like the place and you want to work it out with land, now hey, if you don't care, you don't care. Like if you were planning on leaving anyhow, okay?
Right.
If you're planning on leaving anyhow, then maybe you want to burn bridges and blow things up, and that's fine. But the practical advice. Now here's the next thing. Now this is me just thinking really long term here. There's actually going to be some police officers coming to your door, right? Okay. You may have to meet them again someday. And so here's the thing. You don't want to create attention for yourself either unnecessarily.
Right,
like I do sometimes when I get in these DUI stops and I grumble at the police a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that.
My advice is you don't want to draw unnecessary attention. So if you have to deal with 2 or 3 police officers at this incident, or when it becomes an incident, you want them to walk away saying, he seemed like a reasonable guy and the landlord just seemed like kind of like a scaredy cat, and the plumber seemed like a scaredy cat, and what a waste of our time. And so that the next time they call about you or anybody hears, they're going to go, this guy seemed reasonable the last time. I'm curious to see what he has to say. So you can also build your long-term credibility as well.
Right.
All right, Daryl?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, buddy. You helped a lot.
All right, boss. Take care. 540-0580. Matt, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl. How you doing?
Good.
Question regarding my sidewalk.
Yes.
My borough sent me a letter. They had an inspection team go around to all the borough sidewalk. And the borough owns all the trees that are curbed sidewalk. And they told me I had 6 months to replace my sidewalk because the tree roots uplifted about 35 feet of sidewalk.
Okay.
So the question is, the borough is permitting us to cut through roots of the tree and replace the sidewalk, but they won't take down the tree that is curbed sidewalk that's causing the damage. Every contractor that's come in has said 5 years it's going to happen again. When I asked the borough if they'd take the tree down, they said if I have to take down your tree, I have to take down 50 more just like it. And that's where I am. Is this something that I have to replace when the borough's tree is damaging the sidewalk?
Is it the borough's tree?
It is the borough's tree. They own it.
Yeah, interesting. Because in Carlisle, the tree in front of my office, I have to replace it when it dies.
They replace and trim, and if a tree limb goes down, they take it away. They actually will seed or plant a new tree for every one they take out.
So here's my question: that tree may have to be taken down, right?
If I have to cut through the roots, they say it won't need to be taken down, but I'm pretty sure it will.
Okay, but it would be their problem, the tree.
Correct.
So, and you do have to repair your sidewalk.
Correct.
And it was their tree that did it.
Correct.
But as we've said before on this show, naturally occurring conditions on lands, things like trees, when the roots damage your property, that's not your problem. It's not their problem. It's still your problem. So I think, you have to replace the sidewalk. And even if you don't, they'll come in and replace the sidewalk and put a municipal lien against you.
Yep.
So you'll end up paying for the sidewalk either way. Better to do it with your own guy than whatever contract rate they work out, probably. Yep. And then the tree's their issue. The only thing I would do is make sure I'd write him a letter and say, I'm very concerned that if I do the sidewalk work as you're recommending, this tree is going to die. So as I understand it, you're saying that I'm not liable for any damage to the tree. Thank you.
I got you.
All right?
I got you.
Got to go to break, brother.
Thank you.
540-0580. See you in a minute. Oh, boy. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here. Wake up, people. I know it's dreary out. It's a beautiful Saturday, not. Actually, the fall's in the air. Like, today would be a good day to get in the car and drive out and look at the apples and the pumpkins and all that happy stuff. Fred, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Talk line number is 540-0580. How are you, my friend?
Yes, very good, Carl. Thank you. I had a landlord-tenant complaint that I got a judgment for. I took recovery of real property up to the sanitary's office. This guy had a truck that is still worth some money. Once I went to the pathonetary's office, how long do I have to wait, or what do I have to do to try to get a hold of this truck?
Okay, so you have a judgment against the guy?
Yeah.
And it's been more than 30 days since you got the judgment?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And it's just a money judgment, though, right?
Well, I'd like to have the sheriff come out and sell this truck to me.
So what you have to do is you have to take your money judgment from the district judge and record it at the pathonetary in the county where you got it.
I have done that, yes.
And now you have to ask the sheriff to come out and levy on this person.
I just have to go up and ask, what for paperwork will he want to see?
You got to file basically a request for a sheriff's sale. So it's a pretty simple couple documents basically that triggers the sheriff to go out and execute on the property.
And he'll give me all that at the sheriff's office?
You should be able to get it at the sheriff's office. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, obviously we pop it out of a computer where I come from.
Right.
So practical question, I don't know if the sheriff or pathonetary will have the necessary forms or not. If they don't, obviously you can contact a lawyer and get them or find them online. But it's not a very complicated procedure.
Right. I need papers for a sheriff's sale.
Yep. And what you do is you basically file that, I think, with the pathonetary, who transmits it to the sheriff, and that starts the collection process.
Okay, that's what I was after. Thank you very much, Jen.
And beware of bankruptcies, by the way, because that'll help this guy weasel out.
Okay, yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you much.
All right, my friend. 540-0580 is the talk line number. I'm going to talk about that People vs. Aguilar from Illinois here in a second. If you need to liquidate a state or business, I recommend you call RJ Gold Auctions. RJ Gold can buy medals, pins, patches, tokens, and awards outright. He can also auction off your household goods, your estate, whatever you need to do. So reach RJ Gold at 645-0061. He also has a big auction coming up, RJ's Awesome Auction, on Sunday, September 29th at 1 p.m. at the American Legion in Harrisburg. If you call RJ Gold at 645-0061, again, write this down, 645-0061. You got some collectibles you want to sell, you want to talk about an estate auction as well, you give him a call and you say Carl sent you, okay? PA license auctioneer number AU005798. And by the way, CDL Labor Logistics, and maybe Shane will play their really cool ad with the AC/DC in the background at some point. CDL Labor Logistics is seeking experienced, qualified commercial drivers with clean records for long-term, high-paying driving positions, both local and regional. It's 866-293-1880. When you call them, make sure you tell them Carl Rominger sent you, okay? And, I will be speaking to the Harrisburg Liberty Alliance on gun rights and self-defense. It'll take place on Tuesday, October 1st from 7 to 9 at Haas's Steakhouse at 61 Gettysburg Pike, Mechanicsburg, PA. I didn't even know there was a Haas's in Mechanicsburg. Really? Yeah. There's one in Carlisle. Let me tell you, when I went away to college, I just remember my grandmother coming down to visit me for the first time. She took me out to Haas's. That was the first time I ate at one. And I thought, man, this is like, the Ponderosa on steroids, man. That's what I thought. That's pretty good stuff. So it's Liberty Alliance, Gun Rights and Self-Defense, Tuesday, October 1st from 7 to 9. This is the first time I'm learning I'm doing this. It's interesting. Haas's Steakhouse in Gettysburg, Mechanicsburg, PA. Shane's looking at me like, I'm sure I said yes. I'm sure you ran it by me. I'm sure. That's a Tuesday? It's a Tuesday? Okay, I can do Tuesdays. I'm going to have to give it my wing night. So eat a steak instead. 540-0580. Get in here and give us a call. We'll answer your legal question on the air. So anyhow, the Illinois Supreme Court says, hey, there's an individual right to carry a gun, and that individual right goes outside the house. And the Illinois statute that says that possessing a gun outside the house is some sort of crime is facially unconstitutional under the Second Amendment, and they struck down the law. Now, how did this happen? Well, some 17-year-old juvenile delinquent who was arrested by the police, who was screaming and yelling and waving a gun at some point, asserted that portion of the law that he was convicted of. He was convicted of several different charges, and the court upheld his conviction for being a person under 18 having a gun in their possession when they weren't hunting or target shooting without an adult present to be valid, but nonetheless struck down the general law that says you can't carry a gun or handgun off your own property. And interestingly, remember what I've told you guys before, you got to thank the criminals. The criminals are out there hard at work protecting your constitutional rights, because he had to be arrested and charged with a crime before he would have the standing to bring this challenge. So, even though the Illinois gun law was unconstitutional and was being dutifully enforced by law enforcement officials, which, by the way, that's kind of what our Commonwealth Court just said to that clerk down there in Montgomery County. Even if banning gay marriage is unconstitutional, you may not decide that you must rotely enforce the law. Even though you took an oath to the Constitution, you must rotely enforce the law and carry it out. As a gun owner, how do you feel if the sheriff was told you must collect all, let's say the legislature passes a law that says you must collect all concealed carry permits. You must also collect all high-capacity magazines from people, and they must surrender them to you or it's a felony. I guess the sheriff, according to the Commonwealth Court, must rotely follow the law and carry out his duty and incarcerate you for not turning over your thing. So anyhow, long story short, the only way you get to challenge these things is if you're directly affected by it. And so these criminals are out there committing bad acts, but then when they raise the constitutional defenses, we all win. Because what did we win? We now know that the Illinois Supreme Court has recognized an individual right in the Second Amendment to carry a gun, not just in the House, but outside of the House, in interpreting the Heller decision and the McDonald versus City of Chicago decision to expand that. So long story short, but for those criminals out there who are hard at work getting in trouble, you and I would not have all the constitutional rights we now enjoy. Same thing with the Fourth Amendment and the like. So anyhow, I'm going to go to break now and do one more break before we wrap up the show. But it's 540-0580. If you have a legal question, now's going to be your chance to get it here on the air, because I will answer it live and I will give you the advice you need. So 540-0580. See you in a minute. I was just discussing with Shane Oblivion, the Tom Cruise movie, and I watched it late last night, and I was trying to figure it out a little bit, and it doesn't quite make sense. I like a good science fiction movie, and I can buy aliens with tentacles coming across the cosmos, but then little details bother me, like why is the alien putting them up in such nice digs and things? No spoilers here. Or my other favorite was in Terminator 2. When they're pulling the bullets out of Arnold, okay? And Linda Hamilton's sitting there pulling the bullets out, or he is, I forget, and he's putting them in a little bucket, But they're all perfect mushrooms, okay? Come on now. Who out here shoots besides me knows. You don't get too many perfect mushrooms. In fact, if you get a perfect mushroom, you're like, wow, I'm going to keep this. This is really cool. So, I mean, they're not like Barnes expanders or anything like that. These were like standard 9mm pistol ammunition, and every one of them's an identical perfect mushroom. Or was it cast that way? So the rest of the movie seemed believable, the android coming back through time, and you can't bring back metal unless the metal's inside the flesh. But the perfectly mushroomed part just threw it off for me. Pat, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on? Pat?
Yes.
You're live on the air, Pat.
I am. Thank you very much.
It's like The Price is Right. You're going to get to spin the big prize wheel here.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I feel like Drew Carey.
Yeah, right.
Some people say I look like Drew Carey.
Oh, I haven't seen a picture of you.
Well, when Drew Carey was thin, we didn't look alike, but he's gotten bigger again, and I think now we look more alike again.
I'll have to take a look at that, because I wondered, I'd like to put a face with the voice. Good thing.
Just take Robert Redford. You'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
All right, what's going on?
All right, I have a question. I tried to call once before, and it was at the end of your show.
Oh, I probably hung up on you.
Well, no, you said call back on
okay,
Monday,
good.
But I wasn't able to do that. So anyway, long story short, this is about divorce, and I had read in an article that was in the newspaper that if you were divorced, that you could, you and your husband, if you didn't settle up with your retirement plans and your 401ks or pension, any kind of whatever pension plan, that would be something that could be done.
In a divorce, absolutely.
Okay, but if it wasn't done in the divorce, is there a possibility? Now, this one, actually, I was divorced twice. probably shouldn't say it, but it's true. Way back in '84 and then in '03.
Right.
So I know the '03. That was not a part because I did not get did not have the attorney I started with because he up and died on me.
No.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Well, some people just don't do what they're supposed to.
And then I just I got this. I guess his fellow there that was what would you say? He was the brains of the outfit,
right.
sort of, and the bookwork and the bookworm and so on.
So here's my question for you, though. So you guys, did you have a contested divorce hearing, or did you enter into a settlement agreement?
Yes, we did have a settlement agreement, yes.
That agreement probably says that you waive anything that you didn't preserve in it.
Would I find that somewhere in all the mess and papers I have?
If you can find it, you would want to read it. If not, it may have been recorded with your divorce at the courthouse.
Okay. That's where I'd have to find out if that was part of it.
Here's the answer. If you go forward with a divorce, here's the general answer. Anything that's jointly owned remains jointly owned if you do nothing with it. In other words, if you just finalize a divorce without an agreement and without separating the property, then it would be like two unmarried people owning it after the divorce if you didn't handle it in the divorce. But to the extent that your name's on a credit card for debt or his name was on a bank account for money, if you did nothing with it in the divorce, then presumptively it just belongs to whoever it was titled to after the divorce is over. The only way to undo one of those agreements is to enter into an argument that the agreement was void somehow and not enforceable. And there's ways to do that, but they're tough. Pennsylvania is a very tough state to void divorce agreements.
Is it?
So, long story short, we'd start with the proposition that we need to see what's in the agreement, and if the agreement handled certain claims or specifically waived other claims, then your only way around it would be to void the agreement. Very difficult to do. And if the agreement was silent on things, he would still have the benefit of the argument that whatever it was silent on, you guys must have been happy with otherwise. So you may end up in a position again where it's almost impossible to dip back in.
Okay.
On the other hand, there may have been malpractice by the lawyer who handled the case if, for instance, they didn't handle it right. Now, there was a case in Chambersburg a few years back. Went to a jury trial. Woman sued her lawyer because she said that the marital settlement agreement, she didn't get any of her husband's pension. And he should have advised her to get some of the husband's pension, okay? And it turned out that he did not ever advise her on the pension whatsoever. Anywhere in the writings or anything like that, in letters, correspondence, the marital settlement agreement, complete oversight in a way, okay?
Okay.
On the other hand, she was a sophisticated businesswoman. And what I mean by that was, she ran a company and did some other things and was not somebody who was unknowing to things of the world.
Of the world, okay, yeah.
And the jury found that they were both equally at fault because they took the conclusion that she was aware of her husband's pension and she was smart enough to say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't address it. At the same time, the lawyer was remiss because he obviously should have addressed the pension as well. But when you're equally at fault, the plaintiff fails to win, and so she was not able to successfully sue her attorney. But that's the closest actual real-life experience I've seen where something wasn't addressed in a divorce and it resulted in a malpractice lawsuit. And interestingly, somewhere buried in those letters your lawyer sent you, there may be references to things saying, by the way, just so you understand, you're giving up certain things. I always like to tell the client, here, you just be careful when you sign this agreement. And when I think somebody's signing a particularly bad one, in other words, I sometimes have, a gal come in the office or a man come in the office and say, this is what I want to settle for. And this is a terrible agreement because you're giving up the pension and you're giving up this, you're giving up that. Well, you better bet it comes in writing so that I have you on record telling me you want to give these things up.
Yeah, well, the one in 2003 was a very bad divorce, very unfair as far as I can see. But he just didn't have the wherewithal to execute the things that needed to be done, even though had asked him to do that. And it just didn't happen. And
yes, we have to see what this agreement says. Go find your agreement.
Okay. Find the agreement, and I can find that in the courthouse.
Yes. Well, if it was filed to the divorce in the courthouse, If not, you may have to find it otherwise, which would be to go back to the lawyer who wrote it and ask for a copy or find it in your own paperwork. But generally, we file the agreements of record, or a lot of times we do, simply so that in the midst of time they don't disappear.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, I have 1,500 papers here, so, and there's a lot of other questions, but probably not good.
Yeah, not good for the air.
Not good for the air.
All right. All right,
okay.
Pat.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
Bye. 540-0580. Brian, you're on the air with Carl Rominger. What's going on, Brian?
Carl, about a week ago, I talked to you about a court order to enforce a settlement agreement,
yes.
And that the defendant was given 15 days to tender a check.
Mm-hmm.
Check arrived 20 days after the court order was written.
Right.
I really don't want to see the settlement agreement go into effect. Does that breach it? Can I ask to nullify the agreement?
I think you could. I mean, you could certainly say the other side's failed to perform, and therefore you're rescinding or withdrawing for failure to perform. But I would file that in writing immediately with the court.
Okay, so I'm sorry, you're saying to...
Like, in other words, if I tell you, if you give me $100, I'll deliver you 100 widgets and you give me $100, and that's our agreement, right?
Right.
So he's going to tender money and you're going to tender a release. Same idea. Same thing as buying something at the store. So if you're supposed to give me $100 and I'm supposed to deliver the widgets, and you never show up with the $100, I don't think I have to deliver the widgets, right?
Right. The court order dictated the amount of time and the money. The settlement agreement had a similar time frame, and they didn't meet that.
And here's your problem. There may be a difference between enforcing a settlement and rescinding a settlement. And so you may not be successful in rescinding it, but that's what you want to try. What I would do, I would just serve the other side with a letter that says I'm rescinding the settlement agreement because you failed to perform. Now, what happens when you rescind a settlement agreement is, remember, you end up right back in square one. So you've no longer won anything or entitled to anything, right?
Right.
So
right.
Be careful what you wish for.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, boy. Yeah, buyer's remorse, which this is why... Hear that story you just heard here? This is why when we settle a case, we usually try to get it hammered down as fast as possible. You know, a lawsuit can drag on for 4 years, but once it's settled, within a month or less, usually the funds change hands and the releases are signed, because as time goes on, people get buyer's remorse. Sort of like what happens to people after they get married after a few years and they start going, well, I could have found a better, prettier, smarter, richer, happier, less crazy, you know, whatever, which isn't always the case, but that's just a natural human instinct to have a little buyer's remorse in a contract. All right, guys, Carl Rominger here, signing off. I'll see you next week. As always, don't forget to check me out on Facebook. You can see what my lunch was today. Also, we answer a lot of legal questions on Facebook throughout the week for folks. So if you can't get your question answered on the radio on Saturdays, you can get it throughout the week there. Go to RomingerLaw.com. And, of course, if you can hear this signal, we can help you. 241-6070. 241-6070. Talk to you later.